news from here at home and across the world. This is Primetime News live on Newsfirst with me, Mahina Bongzo, and also joining us live via Zoom is our sign language interpreter, Brian De Cruz, this evening. We start off with a look at your headlines.
Wattala Magistrates Court rejects the request to bury 4 victims. COVID-19 patient who left the chest hospital in Valisara without authorization found in Maradana. Contradictory views on East Container Terminal.
Cabinet පත්‍රිකාවට අනුමැතිය ලැබිලා තියෙනවා. ඒ එක පත්‍රිකාවක් විතරයි ECT පර්යාන්තයේ සම්බන්ධයෙන්.
Cabinet එකේ එම තීන්දුවක් ගත්තෙත් නැහැ. එවැනි cabinet පත්‍රිකාවක් ආවෙත් නැහැ.
Sri Lanka's GDP shrunk by 16.3% in the second quarter of this year, the largest drop in Sri Lankan history. Indian farmers continue to protest. Lanka Premier League finals between Gall Gladiators and Jaffna Stallions underway.
And taking a look at those stories in detail now, the Wattala magistrate Buddhika Sri Ragala rejected the request to bury 4 inmates killed in the Mahara prison riot that broke out on 29th November. The Director General of Health Services was ordered by Wattala Magistrates Court to cremate the bodies immediately.
Relatives and attorneys representing the aggrieved party requested court to allow the burial of the bodies of the 4 COVID-19 infected inmates who have already submitted post-mortem reports to the court out of the 11 inmates who died in the clashes at the Mahara prison. Meanwhile, the 5-member committee of experts today informed the Wattala Magistrates Court that according to the post-mortem report, 4 inmates who were killed in the Mahara prison riot died of gunshot injuries. The relatives of the inmates requested court to grant permission for the victims to be buried instead of being cremated. They sought approval from courts to bury the inmates as it could allow them in the future to exhume the bodies and conduct an autopsy if required for future investigations. Senior State Counsel Nishara Jayaratna, appearing for the Attorney General, said that the deceased had tested positive for COVID-19. She added that the necessary samples have been obtained from the remains. She said that if the demands of the aggrieved party were allowed, there would be a threat in the future in relation to the spread of the COVID-19 virus. The magistrate issued the order stating that the cremation of bodies would not prejudice further investigations. Accordingly, the 4 bodies were ordered to be cremated immediately. The magistrate set a date for the case to be taken up again on the 18th and ordered that the post-mortem reports of the other 7 inmates be submitted to court on the same day.
Initially, it was said that they were not shot and that they died after consuming some pills, but the courts informed that they died after being shot. We are asking for justice. We want to know who the murderer is. He should be punished for this offence. We got to know what exactly happened today. We are asking them to take legal action and punish those responsible.
They tried to cremate the bodies without conducting a post-mortem examination. If this has happened, we wouldn't know what has actually happened. How can they shoot people who are confined to their prison cells? It has been clearly stated that the cause of the death is shooting. We saw how information was covered and people were misled. Although authorities made different remarks, the expert committee has confirmed this, which is a great achievement.
I mentioned at the outset that these were gun wounds. But what we can't forget is that these are COVID-19 infected patients. So I informed the court that these remains should be buried. That was not elaborated. The expert committee has said that these inmates were shot. This order was made on the remains. The other orders will follow.
These were the remarks made in Parliament by State Minister of Prison Management and Prisoners Rehabilitation, Lohan Ratwate, on the 3rd of this month.
None of the inmates had died due to gunfire that was opened at them. All deaths had taken place due to the scuffles that broke out between inmates. No one had died due to gunshots fired by officers. These have been revealed through the post-mortem examination.
The case filed by the Attorney General against parliamentarian Ranjan Ramanayake for contempt of court was not heard due to the fire that broke out in the Supreme Court yesterday.
දෙසැම්බර් 8 වෙනිදා කිව්වා මේක නඩුව ගන්නෙ නෑ කල් යනවා.
On the 8th of December, we were told that the case will be postponed. There were around 90 cases. However, only my case has been picked up. We are trying to figure out who is attempting to put me behind bars.
මහත්තයාගේ මාම තමයි ආශානි අබේසේකර. ඒ ගේ ළඟ තමයි හැදිලා තියෙන්නේ. මහත්තයාගේ වැඩ ගැන මම පහුගිය ටිකේම කිව්වා. එතුමා TNL එකෙන්
How he started from the TNL. Shan Vikramasinghe filed a case and later it was withdrawn. How can someone like that own a company like... So these are the real issues. Even the stock market allegations. When I was in prison, it was he who came to meet Kapila Chandrasekara. He mentioned at the Kaduela courts that he proposed to Dhammika Hemapala to release Yoshita and Basil. I have the voice recordings where Dhammika Hemapala speaks about it. We did not influence the judiciary. It was them.
The Criminal Investigations Department has launched an investigation headed by a Superintendent of Police into the fire that broke out at the Supreme Court complex. 3 CID teams were appointed yesterday to carry out investigations into the matter. Special police teams have also been assigned to investigate the matter. The Kesalvatha police presented facts regarding the fire to the Hauptdorf Magistrate Court today. The fire broke out yesterday at a waste storage located in the basement of the Supreme Court complex. The archives or any other property were not damaged by the fire.
Measures were taken immediately to contain the fire. We will look into this matter to determine the cause of the fire and ascertain whether it was started by humans or by natural causes. 2 special teams have been appointed to investigate this, and investigations are currently underway.
Parliamentarians of both opposition and the ruling parties expressed their views regarding the provincial council elections today.
We are totally against these provincial councils. Provincial councils should be abolished completely. We didn't see any shortcomings without these provincial councils. It actually helped in many ways. We can save twice as much as we spend on parliament annually without these provincial councils. Nothing happened in these provincial councils, and we can see that the administration is flowing smoothly even without provincial councils. The provincial council has been inactive for more than a year now, and we didn't come across any problems in the administration of the country.
We saw the Sangha raising the fact that the provincial council is just a white elephant and that the country can go without it. This is a different story. When we were in the opposition, one of our main slogans was to have elections without postponing it according to the constitution. We must hold these elections on time, and it's already late. We should at least have it now. A responsible government will never set aside regulations set in the constitution by giving excuses.
We didn't have any provincial councils for 3 years now. We need to see if the country has gone backwards without these councils. There were 10 ministers for agriculture in our country, 9 from each province and 1 from the central government. Can we see any development in the agriculture sector in the country? Then there were 10 environment ministers. Is the environment protected? Then there were 10 education ministers. Likewise, we need to review and check whether we really need these provincial councils. These provincial council systems did not solve the national crisis or lead to any development in the country. But there is a provincial council system in the constitution. Accordingly, provincial council elections should be held. In the recent past, this has been delayed with the change in the electoral system. It does not matter what the electoral system is. The most appropriate thing to do now is to hold the provincial council elections under the same electoral system. It is up to the government to decide this. The government should inform the country about their stance in this matter.
There is no electoral system for the provincial council. Parliament rejected the proposal to bring in a new electoral system. Either we should continue with the old electoral system we had, or we had to go ahead and go for a new electoral system. So the party leaders will decide on that. Accordingly, they will advise the government.
There were no ඉස්සරහට අඩි දෙකක් ගන්නවද කියලා පක්ෂ නායකයන් සාකච්ඡා කරලා තීන්දුව කරාවි. ඒ අනුව අණ්ඩුවට උපදෙස් දෙයි.
Provincial council elections are going to be held now. Also, they are talking about a new constitution. A decision can be taken in these provincial councils by bringing in a new constitution. But in the current situation, I saw some protests within the government against these provincial councils. Why are you trying to take all this power? The power is being centralized in one place. They want power. They are ready to pay any compensation to get that power. They were given a mandate of 6.9 million to appoint a president. After that, they were given a two-thirds majority in parliament. The 20th Amendment was passed. And now they are trying to get the powers of the provincial councils. I urge the people of the country not to be deceived by these thieves.
මම රටේ ජනතාව ඉල්ලන මේ හොරුන්ට රැවටෙන්න එපා.
පළාත් සභාව අවශ්‍යයි සහ අවශ්‍ය නැහැ කියලා. ඔබතුමාගේ මතය
ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් මම හිතනවා ඊයේ සාකච්ඡා වුණා පක්ෂ නායක.
I think there was a discussion about this yesterday. First, this needs to be discussed with the party leaders, and then we will act according to that decision made by the party leaders. And if it needs any legal reform, I will look into it.
සංස්කරණ අවශ්‍ය නම් ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් මම මැදිහත් වෙනවා.
While politicians are focused on the elections, the people continue to face their daily struggles to make ends meet. The farming community of the country are locked in a battle on two fronts, the Sena caterpillar on one hand and wild elephants on the other. We reported on the Sena caterpillar menace on a number of previous occasions as well. The farmers say that the situation is going from bad to worse. The first damage to crops caused by the Sena caterpillar this season was reported in the Ampara district. According to the farmers, there is very little hope for a good harvest this season. The Sena caterpillar menace is not limited to Semalandua in Ampara. It has even spread to the Namaloya area and the Namaloya settlement. Farmers in B8, B9 and B10 settlements have been forced to abandon their maize cultivations spanning across about 3,000 acres.
We sprayed pesticide on these plants for a long time, but we cannot control it anymore. What can we do? We are helpless. We are hundreds of thousands of rupees in debt. How can we repay them?
Farmers of the Namaloya settlement have tried everything in their power to get rid of this menace, to no avail. A solution to this is still nowhere in sight. The question on the lips of these farmers is, how are we going to feed our families? What about the lives of thousands of farmers? The Sena caterpillar has not spared the indigenous community in Damana. This pest has also spread to many villages in the Mahiyangane Divisional Secretariat. The Sena caterpillar has already destroyed the paddy and maize cultivations of the indigenous community in Damana.
No one has come here to inquire into this or even talk about it. These are the matters that must be looked into.
Many farmers had pawned their jewellery for their cultivations, and these very same farmers are now forced to take more debt to cover their losses. This water infused with kohoma leaves is to be sprayed on their cultivations.
There is no rain and the caterpillars are eating our crops. Our children will die of starvation. We are deep in debt. We have no one to help us. We can't go into the forest because the wild elephants kill us. We can't even travel to Colombo now. We have nowhere to live during this pandemic.
The Anuradhapura district was spared by the Sena caterpillar in 2018, but this time around, even some areas in the Anuradhapura district have been affected. According to farmers, over 75% of the 3,000 acres of maize cultivations in the Nochagama Divisional Secretariat have been destroyed by the Sena caterpillar.
Many farmers have said that they will not plant maize during the next season. We will be thankful to the government if they encourage the farmers to cultivate maize in the next season and make sure that this does not happen again.
Various methods employed by farmers to handle this pest have so far failed. Farmers have continued to plead with the authorities to look into this matter. While farmers have been hit hard by the Sena caterpillar and are left with no hope of an income this season, the human-elephant conflict continues to rage on. Wild elephants have been encroaching on the land of the Kantale temple for 30 years now. These animals who wander about in the village damage both crops and other property of the residents here. Ame Manikiyamma used to live here. The house was destroyed by wild elephants a few days ago. These people have no shelter over their heads. They had spent the night here with their little children.
මේ බලන්නකෝ අපිට වෙලා තියෙන විනාශේ. ඇයි අපිට එහෙම පිහිටක් වෙන්නේ නැත්තේ? අපිට ඛණ්ඩ දෙයක් නැහැ. අපි වේලක් කාලා ජීවත් වෙන්නේ. ඒත් ඔබතුමාලා අපි ගැන පිහිටක් වෙන්න. අන්න ඉතරයි මං කියන්නේ. මට කියන්න බෑ. මගේ ආදවත දනවා. අපි ඡන්දයක් දීලා ඔබතුමාලා ඉදිරියට ගන්නවා නම් ඇයි අපිට පිහිටක් වෙන්නේ නැත්තේ? ආසරණ අපි ගැන බලන්න. ඇයි ඔබතුමාලට තේරෙන්නේ නැහැනේ අපි විඳින දුක.
Tens of thousands of protesting Indian farmers are camping along at least 5 major highways on the outskirts of New Delhi for more than 20 days and have said they won't leave until the government rolls back new laws on agricultural reform that they say will drive down crop prices and devastate their earnings.
The farmers fear the government will stop buying grain at minimum guaranteed prices and corporations will then push prices down. But the Indian government says it is willing to pledge that guaranteed prices will continue. On day 19 of the protests, leaders of 32 farm unions escalated their agitation by observing a day's hunger strike beginning 8 a.m. at the single border. So far, more than 20 protesting farmers have died either at Delhi's borders or in road accidents since the 26th of November. Despite being initially repelled with police batons and water cannon, the farmers, who are from the football states of Punjab and Haryana, have established a foothold and are showing no signs of leaving. The protest has sparked one of the biggest campaigns to date against Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party, spreading as far as Sydney, Toronto and London. Hundreds in various Canadian cities also came out in solidarity with Indian farmers protesting against the government's new laws. The reforms would remove the middleman and allow farmers to sell directly to supermarket chains and food distribution companies. The government argues the reforms will give farmers the choice of what they sell, who they sell to, and for how much. However, farmers believe that the reforms will leave them at the mercy of big business. According to Indian media, small landowners fear they will be bought out by big corporations, including Adani, which has caused controversy in Australia over its Carmichael coal mine. Protest leaders this week said they would boycott services and facilities owned by Adani and another Indian conglomerate. Meanwhile, the Indian Supreme Court today proposed the formation of a committee with representatives from both the government and farm unions to end the deadlock against the 3 farm laws. The matter will be heard in the courts again tomorrow.
Now, while farmers in India are protesting out of fear of losing their farmlands to the Adani Group and similar multinational companies, parties within the government are expressing contradictory views on allowing the Adani Group to invest in the East Container Terminal of the Colombo port.
On the 14th, Minister of Ports and Naval Activity Rohita Gunawardena said a cabinet paper regarding the development of the East Terminal of the Colombo port with the Adani Group in India had been approved.
Cabinet patrikawata anumatiya labila තියෙනවා. ඒ එක පත්‍රිකාවක් විතරයි.
Only one cabinet paper has been approved with regard to the ECT. The previous government was prepared to sign an agreement with India and Japan without a definite date to receive a loan from Japan. Within that loan, it will be divided into shares. We will be taking a loan, provide shares and proceed with the terminal. As a government, we made a decision to never obtain another loan. We have to pay 25% of the Colombo port's revenue for debt payments. For another 600 to 700 million US, we have requested an investor. Once we select this investor, we will retain 51% of the ownership and 49% will be owned by them. The East Terminal will then be activated. For this, the Government of India has suggested a specific investor that they are interested in. The Adani Group had been recommended to us by India.
අදානේ අපි ඒක සඳහන් කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒක ඉන්දියාව තමයි අපිට යෝජනා කරන්නේ.
අන්න නැගෙනහිර පර්යන්තයේ මේ අපේ වරායේ ඉන්දියාවට දීලා මේ කැබිනට් එක තීන්දුව කළා.
The JVP said the cabinet decided to hand over the ECT. The cabinet has not made such a decision. Such a cabinet paper has not come through. This is the sort of blabbering the JVP are used to. I say it is a different matter if such a paper is coming or not. We are trying to get a partner for this. They can spend and keep a percentage of the income, but the larger percentage of 51% is ours. If someone says 49% will be theirs, it's true. Not the land, but the industry. The agreement could also mention that after a certain time, we can buy it back. We took the government of this country to protect state resources. If we can, we will retrieve the Hambantota harbour as well.
අපි මේ රටේ ආණ්ඩු බලය ගත්තේ අපේ ජාතික සම්පත් රකින්න. අපි පුළුවන් නම් වරායත් ආපහු ගන්නවා.
An event to launch the Made in Sri Lanka concept was held in Colombo last evening. Minister of Industries attended the event.
Made in Sri Lanka වෙළඳ ලාංඡනය ව්‍යාපාරිකයන් 10 දෙනෙකු.
The Made in Sri Lanka webpage was also launched by Minister Vimal Veeravansha. The Made in Sri Lanka brand was presented to local industrialists at this event organised by the National Enterprise Development Authority.
අද ජනගත වෙච්ච වෙබ් අඩවිය madeinsrilanka.org කියන වෙබ් අඩවිය.
The webpage that was launched today will be the leading online platform in the country that would facilitate trade between consumers and wholesale manufacturers. We hope to reach out to the local entrepreneurs as our next step. There was a man in India born in the late 1890s. He solved mathematical questions that even professors failed to solve. When those professors questioned this man as to how he solved those problems, the man replied, "The goddess Sri Lakshmi gave me the answers to all those questions." The Western world laughed at him. The Western world does not understand how things work in the eastern side of the globe. They underestimate everything we invent. The Made in Sri Lanka initiative aims at proving them wrong.
මාතෘභූමිය වෙනුවෙන් අපි හැමෝම Made in Sri Lanka, Made in Sri Lanka, Made in Sri Lanka, Made in Sri Lanka.
Meanwhile, the left centre convened a media briefing in Colombo this evening.
Made in Sri Lanka කියලා කියන්නේ නිකන් ඇස් බැඳුමක් වෙන්න බෑ.
The Made in Sri Lanka concept introduced by Vimal Veeravansha's faction is like a chewing gum given to the people.
In Sri Lanka කියලා කියන්නේ මිනිස්සුන්ට දෙන chewing gum එකක්. හප ඉඳපන්. මානසික අල්ලසක්. හැබැයි ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ ක්‍රියාවෙන් එහෙම Made in Sri Lanka එකක් අපිට.
We never had a Made in Sri Lanka feeling when US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visited Sri Lanka. Where was Vimal Veeravansha during the Foreign Secretary's visit? Where was he when they were discussing the MCC? In the run-up to the election, he claimed the former government was trying to divide the country and pledged that they would never allow anyone to do something of that nature. But 2 weeks after being elected to power, the MCC is 70% good. They claimed they will not amend the laws to facilitate dual citizens joining politics. But what happened with the 20th Amendment? Their indigenousness is merely a costume. They remove it when they need to. They wear such costumes only for show. They are carrying out an American agenda. This is their vision of Made in Sri Lanka. They live in a dream of America, made in America.
Americanu hine inne, made in America.
Sri Lanka's gross domestic product shrunk by 16.3% in the second quarter of this year, the largest drop ever recorded in Sri Lankan history. The economy recovered to a 1.5% positive growth rate in the third quarter of this year.
What is gross domestic product, or GDP?
Gross domestic product is a monetary measure of the market value of all the final goods and services produced in a specific time period. The GDP growth rate measures how fast the economy is growing by comparing the most recent quarter of the country's economic output to the previous quarter.
What is the latest update?
The GDP growth rate during the first quarter of this year, spanning between the 1st of January to the 31st of March, was reported at a negative 1.65%. Thereafter, the Statistics Department did not publish GDP estimates for the second and third quarters of this year, claiming they needed more time to calculate the estimates due to the complicated situation that had arisen due to COVID-19. However, following special procedures, the Census and Statistics Department published their national accounts estimates yesterday. Accordingly, Sri Lanka's GDP growth for the second quarter of 2020, spanning between the 1st of April and 30th of June this year, had shrunk by 16.3%.
What were the sectors that were affected the most?
Growth in the agriculture sector declined by 5.9% during the second quarter in 2020, while the industrial sector declined by 23.1% and services by 12.9%. The Census and Statistics Department points out the countrywide lockdown during the period between the 19th of March and 20th of April this year and the curfew restrictions imposed in the Colombo and Gampaha districts, which are two significant economic hubs in the country, were the main reasons for the major decline in the second quarter GDP estimates. It adds that countries around the world, except for a few such as China and Vietnam, have faced similar contractions in their economies. Sri Lanka's economy recovered to a 1.5% positive growth rate in the third quarter, spanning from the 1st of July to the 30th of September this year. Normalization of business activities during the third quarter of this year helped Sri Lanka rebound to a positive growth trajectory. State Minister of Money and Capital Market and State Enterprise Reforms Ajit Niwat Kabra said the government in its budget 2021 anticipates a 5.5% growth rate in 2021.
What are the views expressed by politicians in this regard? The pandemic has impacted all economies. We hope to rebound the economy next year. We must create a well-planned economy that will be anchored efficiently. We need data for all of this. It is unfortunate to note that the data available in our country are not that reliable. We are facing a massive economic crisis and the general public must be informed of this. However, the people are not given a clear picture of the true condition of our economy. The picture we give is that everything is normal. Unfortunately, because of poor governance and control, there is no room for Sri Lanka's economy to grow. We cannot achieve economic growth with wrong estimates. It might take another 5 or even 10 years to return to economic normalcy. We don't want to talk about the true situation of our country. The Statistics Department released draft estimates for the first 9 months of this year. The GDP growth during the first 9 months were estimated at a negative 5.3%, which means growth in 2020 will be negative. There is nothing to be surprised of, as contractions was experienced in all economies across the globe. This was not our argument. We criticized the claims made by ruling factions that our country will not be affected by any of these shocks and we will go forward. We are making a joke of ourselves in the eyes of the international community. No matter what we claim, we are being downgraded by all rating agencies. I am not accusing the professionals in the political arena. On the other hand, what happened to the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury? He was removed from his position.
නියෝජ්‍ය බාණ්ඩාකාර ලේකම්තුමා හදිස්සියම හිටි හැටියම මේ එතනින් මේ අයින් කරා. ඇත්තටම මේ වගේ වසංගත තත්ත්වයක් රටේ
Ideally, accurate data should be released to the general public when the country is facing a pandemic such as COVID-19. These are extraordinary times. Accurate data is important to all decision-making factions. There was a delay to release the second quarter GDP estimates. As per international standards, quarterly GDP estimates must be released within 75 days after the end of the relevant quarter. Although such estimates are not disclosed to the public, international institutions calculate these figures.
වාර්තා ප්‍රමාද කළා. හැබැයි ජාත්‍යන්තරේ ඒක ගණන් හදනවා. ඒක ඇත්ත තත්ත්වය අපි පෙන්වන්න නැත්නම් ඒගොල්ලොන්ට ගැළපෙන විදිහට හදාගන්නේ. ඒක ඊට වඩා බරපතලයි. අපි ජාත්‍යන්තරව
International trade has become an issue to our country. In my view, we have lost our link with the international community. We need to establish that link once again. We live in a world where we cannot progress as a country alone. No matter what people say, we need to go hand in hand with the international community. We need to prepare a strategy for this.
එබන ඒ සඳහායි අපි සැලසුම් සකස් කරන්න ඔක්කොටම ඉස්සෙල්ලා.
The central bank failed to sell 32% of its treasury bills during the bill weekly auction today. According to the central bank statistics, the central bank failed to sell 13 billion rupees worth of treasury bills out of the 40 billion rupee offering. Total bids received were 55.19 billion rupees, 1.37 of what was offered. The treasury bills, which were offered under 3 maturity periods, was undersubscribed in all 3 maturities.
It's time now for a break. More news on the other side.
A collection of the most memorable songs, Christmas hits and family favourites 24/7. Tune in now.
Struggling to find reliable plumbers, electricians, gardeners and other service providers? Bellboys got you covered.
Welcome back. You're watching News First. In more local news, the North Central Province Development Committee meeting of the Vada Samaga Yali Gamata National Programme was held today under the auspices of Basil Rajapaksa.
Several politicians and state officials representing the North Central Province attended the event. We give priority to change. Do not hesitate to think out of the box. The government, including the President and the Prime Minister, will give priority to proposals that incorporate change, and we will protect those who think differently.
Meanwhile, the first phase of the Gamin Gamata Dorindorata membership development program of the Samagi Jana Balavege was held in Dikwalla today under the auspices of the opposition leader, Sajith Premadasa. The opposition leader expressed his views about the present political situation in the country.
Lockdown karapu bala pradeshawala then lockdown.
The government will not have to pay the 5,000 rupee allowance when it lifts the lockdown status in areas. In my view, a proper mechanism must be established. If lockdown restrictions are lifted in a certain area, the government must pay the 5,000 rupee allowance to the locals in those areas within the next week. If not, the locals in such areas are severely inconvenienced. The government must look into this matter and ensure that everyone is treated fairly. During the Colombo District Committee meeting yesterday, we decided to continue providing the relief pack to those residing in areas under isolation. Although the isolation status of a certain area or a housing complex is lifted, the surrounding areas continue to be under isolation. Therefore, we will continue to provide relief until the isolation status of all areas is lifted. That is not what I am saying. You are right though, and I thank you for that. But what I meant was, for instance, let's assume that the government was to distribute the 5,000 rupee allowance tomorrow to those in an area under isolation, but the government then decides to lift the isolation in that particular area. As a result, the locals will not receive that allowance. I spoke with the chairman of the district committee personally, and he too thinks that it is unfair. The division secretaries have said if a joint decision is taken now, they will be empowered to provide the allowance. I propose that we take a decision. We understand that this is a huge cost to the government. However, we will discuss this matter again. We will invite you for that discussion as well. We cannot reach a decision right now. We will consider it. We'll consider it, sir. We'll consider it.
The remains of Shalinda Amarakon, the trainee pilot who was killed in the Sri Lanka Air Force trainer aircraft crash yesterday, will be placed at his residence tonight.
The Sri Lanka Air Force PT-6 trainer aircraft that left the Air Force Academy in China Bay, Trincomalee on a solo training mission crashed near Janaranjana Tank in the Suryapura area in Kantale last afternoon, approximately 14 nautical miles away from the China Bay Air Force Academy. According to Sri Lanka Air Force, the aircraft, which took off from the China Bay airfield at around 1 p.m, had lost radio communication with the air traffic control tower at China Bay before being reported to have crashed. Army officers today carried out a site inspection on the area where the crash took place. An inspection was also carried out by an aircraft belonging to the Trincomalee Air Force Base. Meanwhile, the remains of Shalinda Amarakon will be placed at his residence in Gonagala, Mapitigama, Ruanvella. The late officer cadet Amarakon, who joined the Sri Lanka Air Force in January last year, was a past pupil of Kegaul Mahavidyalaya. While he began his cadet training in January of 2019, he commenced his pilot training in July of that year.
State Minister of Primary Healthcare, Minister Sudarshini Fernando Pule, expressed the following views regarding locally produced medicine for COVID-19.
Various people have discovered various remedies. The Ayurveda practice goes back to ancient times, which means the indigenous doctors possess good medicines with them. Without tests, we can't confirm if all these can counteract the COVID-19. Therefore, once confirmed by tests, we have no issue with it. Then we can confirm to the public whether these are successful or not. Until then, today the people are afraid. The people will go wherever they hear a medicine is good for the virus. We can't stop the people from consuming what they want, but we urge the public to think intelligently, do your research and use them.
Meanwhile, Dhammika Bandara, the founder of the anti-COVID-19 tonic in Kegol, arrived at the Sri Mahabodhiya today to make an offering of the anti-COVID-19 tonic. Dhammika Bandara called on the Anuradhapura Athamasthanadipati, Most Venerable Pallegama Srinivas Thera, and obtained his blessings. Subsequently, Dhammika Bandara offered the anti-COVID-19 indigenous tonic to the Most Venerable Thera. Thereafter, Dhammika Bandara arrived at the Jayasri Mahabodhiya to offer the COVID-19 herbal tonic. However, according to our correspondent, Dhammika Bandara was not granted permission to enter the premises.
ජයශ්‍රී මහබෝධීන් වහන්සේට මේ පූජා කරන්න ඕන කරමු. කට්ටිය මෙතන ඉඳලා වන්දනා කරගමු. රජ මහත්තයයි මේ රෝග මහත්තයා මේ දෙකනේ. මේවා දෙක අරගෙන ගිහලා මම මෙතන ළඟම පොළොන් තරමක් ගිහලා මම කරලා දෙන්නම්. ඒතකොට
Thereafter, Dhammika Bandara was granted permission to enter the premises of the Jayasri Mahabodhi to offer the anti-COVID-19 herbal tonic. Dhammika Bandara called on the Athamasthanadipati again.
Fox Candy by Fox Resorts has won the Silver Award for South Asia's Best New Hotel at the South Asian Travel Awards 2020. Fox Jaffna has been nominated amongst the world's leading heritage resorts by South Asian Travel Awards.
The South Asian Travel Awards, or the SATA, has been recognizing the best of South Asia's hospitality and travel industry since 2016. The prestigious annual event honors stellar organizations and individuals in a wide array of categories.
Leading heritage hotel resort, Equator Village, Fox Jaffna by Fox Resorts, Grand Hotel Nuwara, South Asia's best new hotel resort, and the silver winners of this category are Fox Candy by Fox Resorts, Ramada & Co by Windham Statue of Unity, Rokolom at the Lighthouse Beach, Divanta Kathmandu.
Fox Candy has been nominated and won a silver award for a leading new hotel. We are the only Sri Lankan property who were nominated and who got this award. The gold medal went to a hotel in the Maldives. The Jaffna property also was nominated as a leading heritage hotel. And Jaffna is a very, very special place, and that hotel is something really unique. I think it's one of the most rare hotels where there are bunkers, and these bunkers were built during the war. So for people to go and see how the ventilation system works there is quite amazing. There are two bunkers, one is a history museum and one is an art gallery. Kandy is slightly different. Kandy is a different climate altogether, but we have a unique location and it overlooks the mountains in Hantana. So that hotel is unique, it's special, it's like a honeymoon special hotel. We have been working as a hotel brand for just 2 years now. So within 2 years to get that award or to be nominated for that award was a huge achievement. So we are with giants in the industry who have been there for maybe 25-30 years, and Fox is just 2 years old. For us to be nominated and actually to win awards at a time like this is a great achievement for us. We are very proud to be part of the Capital Marari group.
Milinda Moragoda, Sri Lanka's High Commissioner to India, says that the cremation of Muslims who died due to the COVID-19 pandemic is a challenge to their religious beliefs.
He points out that many countries around the world have given the opportunity to bury the remains of COVID-19 cases and that the World Health Organization has given permission for it. Milinda Moragoda has written to a local newspaper in this regard, and he highlights that traditions and customs of all religions should be respected.
And an update on the Lanka Premier League. The final of the Lanka Premier League, or the LPL, is currently being held at the Suryavava Mahinda Rajapaksa International Cricket Stadium in Hambantota. The Jaffna Stallions are facing off the Galle Gladiators in the first ever final of the LPL T20 tournament. Winning the toss, the Jaffna Stallions skipper Thisara Pereira elected to bat first. At the end of the first innings, the Stallions scored 188 for the loss of 6 wickets, setting a challenging target for the Gladiators. In reply, the Galle Gladiators are currently at 76 runs for the loss of 4 wickets. And that's a wrap of tonight's edition of Primetime News. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm Mahina Bongzo, together with our sign language interpreter this evening, joining us via Zoom, Brian De Cruz. It's good night from the team.